with Erika Kirk.
Good evening. I'm Bari Weiss, Editor-in-Chief of CBS News, and I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Let me tell you why we're here. If you're watching this or you're sitting here in this room with me, you know what I know, which is that we live in a very divided country, a country where many people feel that they can't speak across the political divide. Sometimes they feel they can't even speak across their own kitchen table. And one of the goals of the new CBS News is to change that. And this town hall is just the beginning. This is going to be the first of many conversations and debates on CBS News about the things that matter most, which are often the hardest to talk about. I can make one promise to you, and it's this. You will not agree with everything you hear tonight or in any of these other broadcasts. And that is exactly the point. Because the premise of a democracy is that we persuade each other with words and not violence, and that the only way to get to the truth is by talking to one another. And that brings me right to tonight's guest, Erika Kirk. 3 months ago, Erika Kirk's husband, Charlie, was assassinated on a college campus in Utah. To some, Charlie Kirk was controversial. To others, he was heroic. What is indisputable is that he transformed the American right in the 21st century. He did it through an organization called Turning Point USA, which he founded when he was only 18 years old. In the wake of Charlie's murder, Erika has now picked up his mantle. The mother of 2 young children, she is also now the CEO and chairwoman of Turning Point. Now, Charlie's murder was not an isolated tragedy. And tonight in the audience, we have other victims of the political violence that's ripping through this country. We also have religious leaders, college students, young Christians, and others invited by CBS News. You're going to be hearing from some of them tonight. Okay, we have a lot to talk about. So, Erika, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for making the time. There's so many subjects I want to cover. I want to begin with the hours and days after your husband was murdered. You got up in his podcast studio, where he broadcasted from for many hours every day, and you said this. You said, "You have no idea what you have just unleashed." What did you mean by that? Erika, one of the most alarming things about Charlie's murder was the way that some people in this country reacted to it.
Yeah.
And not just online. This was an idea that you encountered a lot. And the idea was this. They kind of justified it. They basically said that because Charlie said or believed things that they believed were controversial or even hateful, that he somehow had it coming. What do you say to people who justified his death? As you know, and as I know, one of the ideas that has gained a lot of traction among young people, especially in this country, Erika, is, and this leads them to this kind of justification, is the idea that words themselves are violence. And That brings us tonight to our first audience question. It comes from Angel Eduardo. Angel is a senior writer and editor for the civil libertarian group, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, or FIRE, and he writes passionately about issues of free speech. Angel.
Thank you, Bari. Excuse me. Hi, Erika. My condolences. A recent survey that we took after Charlie's assassination found that 90% of undergraduates believe to some extent that words can be violence. Another FIRE survey that we took earlier also found that 1/3 of surveyed students believe that using violence to stop disfavored speech can be acceptable, at least in rare cases. What's your response to those numbers? And what would you say to those students in particular?
We're going to talk about the book in a little bit, but I want to pick up on a theme that you've now hit on twice, which is the idea that the black squares that we all have in our pocket, our phones, that they are doing something to us collectively. They are dehumanizing us. Later, we'll talk about the conspiracies that are spreading right now on those platforms about who killed your husband. What do you recommend to people sitting in this room? What are your practices to disconnect, to reconnect by disconnecting? One of the things that has happened over the 3 months since Charlie was murdered is that people have gone through the thousands, maybe tens of thousands of hours of words he produced. He said more in 31 years than most people will say in a lifetime. And I want to read a few that have captured the most attention, especially on the political left, okay? Some gun deaths were, quote, unfortunately worth it to preserve the Second Amendment, he said. Acknowledging that he wishes he didn't feel this way, he said, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. He said the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a mistake. Now, I realize that all of those quotes come from longer conversations that he had on his show, but he did say those things. And Charlie is being memorialized by many people as a person who promoted civil discourse, as a person who said, come to the front of the line, let's have a civil conversation. How do you square that with the statements I just read? Does it bother you that people are picking out those statements and drawing an entire picture of who he was? The last person that Charlie ever spoke to was a Utah Valley student named Hunter Kozak. He was asking Charlie a question that day when he was shot, and he's here tonight, and he wants to ask you a question.
Hi there. Erika, I want to tell you how much I appreciate your calls for peace and unity, and I'm likewise horrified by the people in my so-called camp who were cheering about Charlie's murder. I believe that they stoke the flames of violence. But even worse is when powerful, influential people on either side of the aisle stoke the flames. When they do it, the flames can become an inferno. And this leads me to Donald Trump, the most powerful and influential person on earth, who has more responsibility than anyone else to put the flames out. Just last month, President Trump called on 6 Democratic lawmakers to be tried for sedition, which he clarified was punishable by death. He then reposted a simple message: hang them. I think that you've been making strides to bring peace to our country, and that turning point has been asking Democrats to decry the individuals who cheer for violence. I have and will continue to decry them. But any good faith effort to stop political violence must hold both parties to the same standard and expectation. So, in that spirit, will you condemn the violent rhetoric of Donald Trump, the most powerful and influential person on earth?
Do you think our political leaders have a responsibility to turn the temperature down right now?